I laughed a little bit when I saw the topic because I was like, I couldn't recommend 1,000 other people to come talk about silence besides me. This is like humorous and ludicrous, but you know.
Hey everybody, welcome to the BIC Life Podcast. We're so glad that you could join us either watching on video or listening to us in the car or wherever it is you are listening to this. So glad you could join us. My name is Ryan and I'm joined again by Scott.
Hey, how's it going?
And today we're really excited because we have someone else joining us as well. And we're going to let him introduce himself. Another Ryan.
Oh,
Beautiful
man.
name.
Just what the podcast was missing. Another Ryan, another young white pastor in the BIC.
That's right.
That's right.
Crushing it.
So in case you couldn't hear from through his voice, his last name is Cagno. Sometimes you can tell a person's last name through their voice. But this guy, Ryan Cagno, it's a joke, guys. It's a joke.
Got it. Okay.
So Ryan, tell us a little bit about yourself, man.
Yeah, I'm 33. I'm a Capricorn.
All the important stuff. I said, tell us about your stuff, not your Tinder profile.
Oh, sorry.
Tell us about.
I grew up in Harrisburg, PA, and have just moved back to Harrisburg, PA, in the past 6 months. I've been in the BIC since 2009. I was a college student, getting a bachelor's degree in music theory. But don't worry, because I balanced it out with a second major in English literature. So just the 1-2 punch of ineffectualness.
Well, no. So you could write music and lyrics.
There you go.
I mean,
yeah, totally worth $70,000.
Yeah.
So I, in the midst of that in college, I got involved at a BIC church and, yeah, then kind of just stopped caring about school and started doing ministry stuff, and then went to seminary eventually. So those degrees became prereqs for seminary, and I've been a pastor in different capacities in the BIC for the last decade or so, different places in Palmyra and now in Harrisburg. So happy to be on BIC Life, BIC Life.
Yeah.
Yeah, man.
Two thoughts on the name first.
Yeah.
BIC Life. I mean, I know that real dyed in the wool BIC people, it's BIC, I guess is how they say it. Yeah. I think of the lighter, which is like a whole different lifestyle than what you guys are trying to necessarily convey.
I think of the pens.
Yeah.
Oh, nice.
That's
nice.
Yeah, the number 2 clicky pencils. The BICs.
BIC sounds weird to me, but I've only been in the denomination for 13 years, which so if you can't trace your lineage back to, the 18th century, then what are you even doing in this denomination?
Right.
So you're not a cradle BIC.
Ugh, gosh. No.
I love it.
I have been grafted into the holy stump.
There you go.
Okay.
But so I would say BIC, but BIC Life's good. I think whichever way you go, you should consider spelling life with a Y. But I mean, there's just a note, take it or leave it.
Well, I'll tell you, when we were coming up with a logo, having 2 eyes really helped because you've got the microphones, so that really helped. If we get a third continual host, maybe we can do the Y, so that way one microphone can be on the one side and one microphone can be on the other side.
I'm glad you're already trying to incorporate that terrible idea.
Trying to work through.
Maybe this is your official tryout.
Oh,
yeah, there you go.
keep those good ideas coming, Ryan, and maybe you'll.
Well, it's funny because I haven't been a part of the BIC denomination for very long, but when I was back in college, I attended a Brethren in Christ church, and BIC was kind of how they referred to themselves, and that was kind of like my first exposure to that, and so it sounds natural to me, even though I haven't been in the denomination for all that long or all my life. My family's not, all that kind of thing. But BIC sounds, and plus, if there's an abbreviation, I like to use it. I like I like the snappy, catchy kind of stuff. So BIC Life sounds good to me, but I don't feel too strongly about it. BIC Life versus BIC Life. It's just in my head. That's the way it had always been. So it's probably going to be the way it continues to come out of my mouth.
Well, I know I can speak for the listenership in saying that it's great we're getting this far into the weeds on it.
Yes.
This is exactly what people are tuning in for.
This is why we're here, man.
The
And
age-long debate.
We're a hard-hitting news program.
We like to give people options, so
Yes, which is why we're giving people the option of 2 Ryans today.
there we go.
Oh, yeah.
So you pick your favorite. So, yeah, cool. Well, hey, Ryan, thanks so much for joining us today, man. We're really excited to hear some of your perspectives as we talk about some of the topics that we've got going on. Scott, before we get into our main topic today, I wanted to hit a little something fun here. So I came across this article, which I'm a dog lover. You guys have dogs, right? Or used to, or
Used
I have a
to.
dog.
I used to.
Ryan does, Scott used to. So
Yeah.
Scott, what kind of dog did you grow up with?
Well, all right. So let's see. I don't remember what Clyde was.
Clyde was his name?
Clyde. Yeah, he was
Oh,
black.
what a great name for a dog.
He was this black, kind of long hair, and had white, like kind of down under his chin. But when he passed away, we got a yellow Labrador,
Oh, fun.
and my parents named him Barney.
So good.
I had no. I mean, Barney to me was this purple dinosaur I didn't want to watch on TV, but that grew on me. So it was Barney. So he was a good
Barney.
dog. Yeah.
Golden Lab. Awesome. Ryan, what kind of dog do you have, man?
Still trying to process that Scott didn't like Barney, but
I'm sorry, man. Couldn't do it.
what were you watching?
More mature things.
Oh gosh. I have a dog also. like Batman is what he meant.
Yeah,
Yes.
Batman, Spider-Man.
Batman the animated series.
That's right.
Was-
Yes.
Yeah, that's award-winning children's television.
I'm the dark, I'm the night. Yeah.
Chills.
Batman.
Chills.
Ooh, so good. Such
I
good
have
show.
a dog named Roxy. This is my first dog. So me and my wife,
Oh.
Ashley, neither of us grew up with a dog. And so after our first year of marriage, he thought, you know what, let's get a rescue dog together because we've never done this before. And we live in an apartment in New Jersey.
Makes sense.
Yeah. Checked all the boxes. So we got Roxy. She was rescued. She was born and raised for some length of time in Puerto Rico. So they have a huge like stray dog population. And there was a rescue farm in Jersey where we were living that specialized in bringing some of these dogs over. There's so many that they're kind of like basically become their own breed almost, like Sato is what they're called. But so we have no idea what she is. We have no idea how old she is, but she is a dog though, for sure. She is Canis lupus or whichever one.
Right, yeah.
Technically.
Oh, that's cool. So yeah, we've got a dog. She's a rescue as well. She was a stray down in South Carolina. They found her on the roads in South Carolina and brought her up, and we got her in New Jersey. And so she barks with a southern accent when she barks. She's very cute. So yeah, but then I also grew up with a dog, a little tiny dog. She was about 4.5 pounds at her biggest, and I wanted to name her Tank, but my family decided to go with Buttons. So grew up with Buttons. And but anyway, so I'm a dog man through and through. So I found this article and it just resonated with the dog man inside of me. So they found this on BBC.com, and it says that dogs can cry tears of joy when reunited with their owners. How did that hit you guys? Did it hit you like it hit me? Like I felt it in my heart.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Well, I don't know that I remember our dogs like crying when we got home, but they were super happy, tails wagging. But I do remember when we'd leave, the dogs would just whimper, right?
Yeah.
Especially Barney. He'd be like, He'd have his he'd have his like head between his paws and just look all sad.
Oh gosh. Well, and they were talking about in this article that the eye contact with the dogs releases, was it serotonin?
I don't remember.
No, serotonin. What was it? I gotta look it up again. It was the chemical that makes you feel good.
Dopamine.
Dopamine. It might have been dopamine.
Mountain Dew.
One of those two.
Mountain Dew.
Oxytocin.
No, it was. Oh, what?
Nope.
No, that was part of their experiment, or part of their science and sciencing.
Don't worry, guys. I'll just edit this.
Secretion of oxytocin. A dog's gaze stimulates secretion of oxytocin, making owners more nurturing or protective of their pet. So yeah, but anyway, it just
humans get the oxytocin?
Yes, humans get a kick of oxytocin with eye contact with their dog to make them more nurturing and caring for their pets.
That's very
but the
weird.
dogs cry tears of joy after being reunited with their owners after a period of several hours.
I'd like to explore, what do we make of that theologically, that human beings get a rush of oxytocin making eye contact with a dog? That's very strange. I will say that I would love to know why we were created that way. There might be something in there. I read this article and was just thoroughly unsurprised, I guess. It just seemed like I mean, I wasn't unmoved, but I was just like, yeah, that sounds about right. My dog, we have like a nanny cam for when we have people dog sit or whatever. Just, Big Brother, always watching. But we just out of curiosity, sometimes my wife will tap into it when we're gone out and about, just to see, I wonder what Roxy's doing. Literally nothing ever, but just sitting there and waiting, nothing. I mean, it might be our dog. She doesn't play with balls. She doesn't play fetch. She doesn't do anything, but she's kind of like a cat. But it didn't surprise me, because we our presence is her only joy. And anyway, so
she just sits around pining for your
literally
return.
for 9 hours. Just it's pretty crazy.
Oh, wow.
She'll get up for water once in a while, but yeah.
So reading this, it just kind of prompted, dogs. I was telling you guys before we started recording, I had some questions, and they were kind of jokey kind of questions, but just thinking about how dogs are just the best ever and everything. But one of the questions, do dogs love us more than our own children do? And I don't think that that's true. In fact, I guess I should go on the record in saying, no, it's not true. However, when your kids get older, it makes you wonder. Because when my kids were younger, I'd come home from work and, man, I got the reception committee from my kids, man, running to the door, daddy's home, blah, blah, blah. I only get that reception from my dog now. If he could speak, she'd be saying daddy's home. But yeah, my kids just aren't. Sometimes my daughter will. She's 7. Sometimes she'll get that going. But yeah, it kind of makes you wonder. As the kids get older, you kind of miss that kind of reception.
Oh, yeah. So my daughter's 12, and I come home. She's like, oh, hey.
Oh, it's you.
Or I'll say, hey, how's it going? And silence. I'm like, I was talking to you. My son, he's 19. He's just now, responding back, and I think they're excited in the beginning, I guess. I haven't experienced that. Our kids are adopted. But then when they hit the teenage years, that's when they regress. They don't want anything to do with you. And then when they get a little older, outside of those teenage years, they start to become a functioning member of society again, and they're willing to acknowledge your presence.
Engage with life a little bit.
Dogs, however, they're always loyal. They always love you.
Yeah. Maybe their love is more consistent, at least. If it's not greater, right?
Yeah.
I have a 3-year-old daughter, so I would say right now between Naomi and Roxy, it's like a dead heat.
Oh yeah.
At least in terms of how they respond when I come in the door, it's pretty similar.
Yeah.
It's a lot of panting and jumping and just barking and excitement, just all of it. They're roughly similar in their responses. And yeah, I mean, do our dogs love us more than our children? I mean, yeah, over more consistently over time they do. And,
maybe.
I would
Maybe a
say
little more quick to forgive sometimes.
I would say my dog loves me with all of her capacity to love me, right? Like
yeah.
her capacity is presumably less than my daughter's is. I mean, I don't know how we like assess that, but
Right, yeah.
what is love, Ryan?
I just, baby,
Don't hurt
don't
me.
hurt me.
Mm,
Don't hurt me no more. Exactly.
nice.
Exactly. You ask the question, got to be ready for that answer.
Yep.
Well, cool. So anyway, yeah, we'll see if we can link that in the show notes. It's a fun article at the very least. So if you're tired of negative news and stuff like that, check it out. I found it on BBC. We'll link there. Scott, you kind of gave us an unintended segue into our next story with the way that your daughter responded to you there.
In silence.
In silence.
Ooh,
In silence. Oh,
nice
man.
segue.
Yeah.
So, when do you guys want to? I'm happy to give the overview of the article, but when do you guys want to take a stab? Just kind of recap the article here that we're responding to.
So this article is by Mike Glenn. He's a pastor, and he just talks about the importance of silence, not just in just life, but also in church life, which I thought was pretty cool. And he starts out the article saying that with that pithy quote that we think St. Francis of Assisi may or may not have said. He says, "Preach the gospel always, and if necessary, use words."
Mm-hmm.
I have a bit of a problem with that that whole saying. But I think what he's trying to get is, sometimes actions speak louder than words, right? Like if we're actually loving on people, like, well, let's actually show that. But I loved what he quotes Francis of Assisi, but then he quotes his mom, right? Which I think is great.
Potato. I love it.
So he says, look, here's what my mom used to say. If you can't improve the silence, don't say anything at all. And I thought, I might actually steal that and use that on my kids.
Yeah.
I just said they're quiet, but when they're not quiet, sometimes they're rude. And if you can't improve the silence, maybe don't say anything.
Yeah. Well, I like the turn of phrase there, because I think we've all heard the phrase, if you can't say anything nice, don't say anything at all, right? But this one, if you can't improve the silence, like the silence that's already there, if you're going to try to fill it with something, if you're not improving on it, just chill. Just take a step back. I thought that was a really cool turn of phrase there.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so this whole article was just on the importance of silence and how we as a society really have kind of lost the art of silence. Like silence actually kind of makes us uncomfortable. Like, oh, what's going to happen now, right? We always have to have something to kind of fill that space. And even in this podcast, if I were to just stop talking, you guys just got uncomfortable, didn't you? Like, So anyway,
I was thinking about that as you were just before you said that. I was like, this is really psyching me out here. I'm like,
yeah, right.
These guys brought me on here to contribute something wise and insightful, and I feel the need, like, when am I going to jump in with my thing? Like, maybe I should just hang back. And
he's
be
gonna.
wise.
Ryan is here to demonstrate silence for us today on a podcast.
Yeah, for those of you watching the video podcast, you're really going to be just edified and encouraged by Ryan's silence today.
And those just listening to it, you'll never know what you missed.
That's right.
So, there you go. Well, Ryan, what were some of your overall thoughts from this article as you were reading it, as we were going through here? What were some of your thoughts? Let's just get some overall quick takes here.
Yeah.
About an article not doing quick takes.
Yeah. First, I just realized it's not written by Scott McKnight, but hosted on his blog. So that was something I learned 5 seconds ago. But
you're welcome.
Yeah, it was helpful. I mean, there's a lot of different entry points into silence. I mean, this is generally silence as not saying words when you otherwise could, which is helpful. I think it's resonated with something that I am learning in fits and starts as I get older. I laughed a little bit when I saw the topic because I was like, I couldn't recommend 1,000 other people to come talk about silence besides me. This is like humorous and ludicrous. But, I think when you're younger, you assume that like wisdom means like saying the right thing or saying the insightful thing. Like wisdom means like having the right words at the right time. And then I read somewhere recently, I'm reading through Celebration of Discipline by Richard Foster. It might've been in that. I don't remember where, but certainly it seems to track with my experience and what I've been told that, as you get older, growth and wisdom often just comes down to just like saying less and not more so than saying the right thing at the right time, which tracks with, all of the Proverbs and so many other things that I'm sure we'll talk about. But so silence from that angle. It was an interesting article. It's helpful. I mean, I think the hospital room anecdote is provocative and informative.
Yeah. You want to give us a quick, for those who haven't read the article, we'll link to it in the show notes, but for those who haven't read it, Ryan, can you just give a brief synopsis of that anecdote, the article there?
He just says his father had a bypass surgery. He was in the hospital, drifting out of consciousness. And he just remembered, people coming through and saying, the normal succession of platitudes, and how I guess he's a pastor, in his early pastoral ministry would do a lot of the same. And how he learned over time to just like shut up when he's in a hospital room with someone who's, having a severe medical experience. I haven't done chaplaincy training or like clinical pastoral education, but I know a big aspect of that is just like, presence and not talking.
I will say, so I became the lead pastor late 2019. So not that long ago, just under 3 years ago. And I've had some experiences now that we're allowed back in the hospital, experiences in doing hospital visitation. And there is that, I don't know, like there's that tendency to feel like, well, I'm their pastor. I should have the right words to say here, right? It almost feels wrong to not say anything. And after I read this article, it really affirmed what I already knew, but it helped me feel a bit more comfortable with it, to just, it's okay when you don't know what to say, right? It's okay to just sit there. It's okay to even pray in silence, rather than just praying out loud. But yeah, anyway, that segment that Ryan Cagno is talking about, for me as a pastor, made me feel a bit more comfortable about, what to do in those highly emotional situations.
Yeah. Yeah. And even more than just being a pastor with hospital visits, right? You go to you got a friend who just went through a bad breakup, or you have a friend who just experienced some betrayal, or somebody who's got a sickness in your family or something. There's this pressure, at least I feel it, just, taking the pastor role aside, to say the right thing, to say the words that are going to bring the comfort to them. And I think this idea of silence gives us permission to let the Spirit do the talking. I think to let God say what needs to be said, and you don't have to be the mouthpiece. You don't have to be that all the time. It just kind of gives you permission.
Yeah,
I feel like.
Yeah.
It's pretty easy.
No, go ahead, Ryan.
Yeah,
I think it's pretty easy when you just think about yourself when you've been in moments of personal tragedy or loss or grief, and then think of those moments where people have sat down beside you, when you've been at a funeral or whatever it may be, and like with respect to people at funerals, like, I don't remember none of those words that you said sank into me, or like were what I necessarily needed in that moment. Or I was like, like, yeah, no, you're right. Actually, like, wow, like that, my grief is gone. You really like,
what a theological insight you just
God
had.
does have a plan. You're right. I hadn't thought of that. Like, so thinking about myself in those moments and how, like, man, the last thing I need is for you to like try and make sense of this for me, or try and, tie up the little theological bow, in a funeral setting or whatever it may be. It's just like, no, this is awful. I lost this person. It's going to be months and years or the rest of my life that I'm processing this. And like, I'm really glad you're here, but also be quiet. or I'd honestly rather talk about the Pittsburgh Steelers right now than about like this loss that's happening, just like a tether to normalcy. It does make me think of like the one verse in Job where his three friends are not total, like they show both sides of this, right? So Job 2:13, you see them sitting beside him for 7 days and nights, and they said they didn't say a word. No one said a word because they saw how great his suffering was.
7 days. That's a long time.
Well, and then they totally erase all of that goodwill with 30 chapters of trying to like rationalize away his grief and be like, well, XYZ theology, and they blow it, but it's a good test case.
It's a good start. They got off to a good start. Yeah. But, kind of shows that it's a good start, but it's also a good finish. As soon as you say something, it's possible to do damage with your words. And so, yeah, sometimes just being silent, if you can't improve the silence. Yeah. Yeah. One of the things I liked about this article was, because when I think of silence and in the good that silence can bring, I typically think of the more the spiritual side of things, the spiritual discipline of silence and things. One of the things I liked about this article is it brought it into the realm of our culture. And how we interact with people in various ways, in person, online, things like that. It almost made it more of a cultural discipline. So like the social media stuff, hot takes, opinions, arguments, politics, all this kind of stuff. And he says in the article, it says, not everything that happens requires comment. And that can be like revolutionary for some people who just feel the urge, like, I have to say something. I read something, I have to say it. I have to retweet it. I have to like it. I have to whatever. And then he says later on, for some reason, everyone in our world feels the need to give their opinion on anything and everything. Politics and economics, who's to blame and who's not, who wore what at the latest awards banquet, and what comedian, athlete, or professor has been canceled. On and on and on it goes, he said. And I really appreciated, this sounds bad for a pastor, but taking it out of the realm of the theological and spiritual and stuff, and putting it into the realm of practical, which obviously our theology and our spirituality affects our practice very much so. So I don't mean to bring this like dualism into the conversation, but to see a very practical, real world application for the virtue of silence in areas and mediums and platforms that are typically not known for silence, particularly when you think of social media. So what did you guys think about that?
Are you guys on Twitter, by the way? Like,
I am, but I use it mainly to follow sports. So I haven't posted on Twitter in a while.
I'm pretty sure I have an account. I've not used it in years.
Yeah.
So
yeah, I just follow people. I don't tweet myself generally. But.
Actually, I just remembered why I have an account. So back when my wife and I used to watch The Voice, I believe you used Twitter to vote, and that's what we did.
That's pretty important.
Yeah,
nice. We voted for So You Think You Can Dance. I don't know if you guys knew that show.
So you think you can dance?
So you think you can dance.
What is happening?
We voted for that show. Sorry, Ryan, go on.
What is happening? Well, no, I'm curious. I mean, I think, so I don't tweet, but I mean, even just scrolling through and using Twitter, I see how it affects my thinking and my mind, because Twitter is purely, more than any of the other social media platforms, Twitter is purely like, just like the hot take zone. Like, it's just, I'm here to deliver an opinion as quickly as possible on something, no, it's disincentivizes waiting 3 days to hear like the actual context of a news story, and incentivizes you got to get on it, you got to be as incendiary as you can, but it changes the way I even think, to start, like, trains me and my mind, like, well, I need to have a holster, a readied, like, opinion on everything. Scott, I think you were going to say something. I didn't mean to.
No worries. Yeah. I when I thought about this article, I immediately thought of this passage in, sorry, let me get it up here. Oh, it is up. Look at that. This passage in James chapter 1. And it says in verse 19, "My dear brothers and sisters, take note of this. Everyone should be quick to listen, slow to speak, and slow to become angry." And, Ryan S. talking about this as being kind of like a lifestyle. More, it's not just like theology. It's like, so that's kind of been my approach with this whole verse. And I remember years ago, I was a youth pastor, and I was talking about this verse, teaching on it. And my one student just said, "I can't do that." Like, yeah. And I kind of laughed at first too. Like, what do you mean you can't do that? Like, see, that's the problem with all you kids, like,
yeah, right.
You need to slow down. You need to get off your device. Right. Yeah. But later on, I learned, as I got to know him more, he was dealing with some serious anxiety issues, serious things at school, and his mind was racing. He couldn't turn it off. And I think that's what he meant. Like, I can't be quick to listen or slow to speak, slow to become angry, because I can't turn my mind off. Like, it just races constantly. And, I've now had experience with anxiety. I know what it feels like, and I know what that feels like when you can't turn those racing thoughts off. And it's just like, it's like you're on a high-speed chase, not knowing where to go next, right? And yeah, anyway, I don't know. I just immediately think of these words here. Everyone should be quick to listen, slow to speak, slow to become angry, and just kind of reach for that.
Yeah. Scott, that brings to my mind that it's not just about, wisdom is not just about silence. It's about, when you do use your words, how do you use them wisely and constructively? So, we were talking about before we started recording, how can silence be abused, right? Silence can be abused too. You can use it as a cloak for cowardice, right? If you're in a position to say something, confront something with the truth, you can just freak out and not say anything. Sometimes there is a moment to speak. You can be used as a weapon when you're using it as a silent treatment at home. But I think about what you were talking about there, Scott, with the engagement with the youth in your youth group at one time. That's a very real thing, anxiety, and how you can't shut your mind down, and so sitting in silence might just feel like you are alone with the worst company ever, your own mind. And so sometimes it's less about being silent and finding the best ways and times and audiences for your speech, meaning rather than going online and posting your hot takes, rather than going to just anybody, find a wise person. Maybe there's a counselor or a therapist that you can go to and say, I need to talk. I need to get these words out. I need to get this experience out. So it's not just about, okay, let's be silent, but let's refrain from let's be silent here and here in these areas where it could be destructive, but let's use our words wisely with these people over here where it can be healthy and edifying and help to grow you and deal with things in healthy ways.
Yeah. You know, I've found that as soon as you bring up the word anxiety, you know, the world will say, "Oh, well, you need to like just meditate and empty your mind," like that kind of stuff. And I've found that not helpful. In fact, I know we were talking offline earlier just about meditating and what does Scripture actually say about that? And I've actually looked that up. It comes up about 27 times, I think. Regardless, 25, 26, 20,
approximately.
Yeah, approximately. Regardless, however many times it comes up.
3 times.
Every single time it comes up, it's never about emptying your minds. It's always about filling your minds with the Word of God and His truths. So, you know, I've personally found that to be the best defense against anxiety. I have certain verses that I just kind of reflect on over and over, just because they just mean that much to me. You know, that God will actually give me a peace that surpasses all understanding. And then when you're in the midst of that anxiety and you feel that anxiety just kind of released, well, that does surpass my understanding, because not that long ago I was a wreck, and now I'm like, wow, you know.
Yeah.
So just you know, filling our minds with God's word for me has been helpful in that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, actually just I preached yesterday morning and I cited that exact thing. I think I just stole it from Richard Foster because I've been reading that book, but basically
or the Bible.
I didn't plan to say this, but right. Well, I knew there was someone in my congregation that if I said the word meditation, I was talking about spiritual disciplines. And if I said meditation just straight up, it would just be a stumbling block. And so I kind of said, like, the shortest way you can like distinguish what Eastern meditation and Christian meditation is what you just said, Scott. It's like emptying yourself versus filling yourself. You know, meditation in Scripture is always, meditate on your word daily. And that was me, like, just repeating back the exact thing that you said.
It's okay, but you preached on it yesterday, or wait, what's today? Monday? Yeah, so you preached on it yesterday.
Yes,
yeah, and the guy who I was worried would be most like thrown astray by that commented, that was the best, like, you know, quick, concise differentiation between Eastern meditation and Christian meditation that I've ever heard.
Good.
And in my head, I didn't say anything. As in my head, I was like, first, stole it from Richard Foster. Second, that was just for you, buddy. So,
yeah, just for you. Just for you. What? He heard it.
Take these little victories.
That's right.
Now you can go home. Now you can go home and tweet about it.
Oh, yeah, tweetable moment.
That's right. But I think as we have done in previous episodes, as we talk about, you know, we've talked about articles and topics and things like that. But you know, we've kind of tied a little bit to some of the some of the roots, some of the foundations of the BIC, so we can learn to think biblically about these things, you know. So as we're reading an article, as you're reading an article about silence, how can we think about this from a brethren in Christ perspective? And maybe sometimes it's not even all that necessary to do that, but as we look at our core values, sometimes we'll tie things into our core values. I had a couple here that I was thinking about, and if you're listening to this or watching this, you know, before that, we've referenced a couple of times some of the conversations we have offline. And so before, you know, we just kind of run through things to make sure we know kind of about where the conversation's going here before we hit record. And so I mentioned a couple of the core values that I thought would be good. And then Scott mentioned a couple and Ryan mentioned a couple. It's like really all of them can fit in some way with this topic. But just thinking about some of these core values, let's kick some of these around a little bit, guys. What were some of the ones that you felt were appropriate and matched well and can help us bring some perspective to this topic of silence from the core values perspective.
All right. Well, I'll go. So I mentioned pursuing peace, simply because I go back to that verse I shared from James chapter 1. Slow to speak, slow to become angry. The implication there is if I'm quick to speak, I'm quick to become angry. And where do we see that played out a lot often today? Online, social media, that kind of stuff. And that's not exactly pursuing peace when we're just kind of, our knee-jerk reaction to comments online is to just kind of, attack people. So somewhere wrapped up in pursuing peace is this practice of silence. In fact, I was looking earlier this morning through the scriptures whenever the word silence would come up, but even quiet. So when I looked up the word quiet, it was often linked to this. I don't know if I want to call it practice, but linked to the word rest. This idea of being in God's rest, right? There's just something to that. This being in this peaceful, silent rest with God. And when we're pursuing peace, I think when we're in that kind of a state of mind, we're more likely to be peaceful to others around us.
Yeah.
That's a good word, man.
And I mean, so this finds root in, in early Anabaptist history. Some of the early Mennonite communities and folks were called the quiet in the land,
Quiet in the land.
Isn't that awesome?
It sounds like something from Lord of the Rings. Like they're the quiet in the land. I don't know. That's nice. I like that.
It's pretty cool.
I don't know. I was going to say they must have held the what is it? The 13th ring that no one knew about.
Yeah, right.
Because they were quiet.
The 10th ring for humans. There were 9 rings given to the kings of men. So
that's
there
right.
would have been 10th for them. So.
Thank you for that fact check.
Oh gosh.
Sorry, Ryan, continue.
I mean, I like Lord of the Rings too, but that was a little much. Yeah, well, I'm not an Anabaptist historian, so someone else can come on and correct all my, mistakes here. But that was a term that was referenced. It talks in 1 Thessalonians 4:11 about lead a quiet life, and just be about your business, doing work with your hands, etc. And there absolutely is a link between pursuing peace and that idea of quiet. It's like, I think we in a lot of ways have to quiet our souls, in that pursuit of peace. And for the early pacifists, for the Mennonites, and then for, the Amish, and just you're trying to live a quiet life in every way that we, and I think when we say it that way, live a quiet life, I think we kind of get that, right? You get what that means, how silence could be a virtue that kind of characterizes a whole way of being, where you're, living at as far as it depends on you, living at peace with everyone and with nature even. And so I think it's totally a pursuing peace thing, Scott.
Yeah.
That's a good one. That's good. And a couple I was thinking, the relying on God core value, I thought was really interesting when thinking about the concept of silence, because I thought about, okay, why do I feel the need to talk or say something in a moment, either a moment where I feel comfort is necessary, or I just am uncomfortable with silence or something? Why do I feel? I think a lot of the times the reason I feel like I need to say something is because I feel like I need to rein control back in of the situation, or I need to feel in control of myself, or I just feel like I'm losing control here if things get too quiet or whatever. And so I think being silent is, in a way, surrendering control to God in the moment, in the conversation that you're having, the need to, as we were talking about before, in the contexts of suffering or sickness or something, when you don't say anything, you're kind of surrendering to God to say, all right, Spirit, you do the talking. You do the ministering that is needed here. And so I feel like that core value really spoke to me in this conversation, as well as witnessing to the world. The other core value, witnessing to the world, just how our world doesn't need any more. It just doesn't need any more hot takes and these crazy rash opinions that are sent out the minute that is humanly possible to do that, and sent out into the world before there's reflection and thought on it. Like, the world needs a different witness, and if the church can practice that and model that, instead of too often contributing to the alternative, which we have too often done as well, I think it could be a really powerful witness to not say something sometimes.
Yeah.
That's a really interesting idea. And I mean, it certainly as a counterpoint to the way the world tends to be in terms of rushing to speak, it's very provocative. Provocative because, there is often a lot of public pressure to speak, especially if you're a Christian leader. I mean, no one's banging down our three doors for like, what's your take on this? Because we're, we are who we are. But like, if you were, as a whole, for Christian leaders and whoever it may be, but I think in any church, like with their pastor or whatever, a desire to like hear their take, here, this needs to be addressed on a Sunday morning, or we need to put out a statement on X, That's an interesting thought, Ryan, because I guess I think of witness often in terms of like what we are saying or what we are doing. And I think often it is important to speak. And there's a lot of times where we've been silent on things.
And that's where silence has been abused.
There's been right. So if we're rolling this conversation back 2 years ago to like this early summer of 2020 and some of the different things going on in regard to race in our country, there was it was a powerful moment where a lot of white evangelicals, at least, who had kept their silence for infinity number of years, had finally, had spoken. But even in that, and I was part of that, but I also felt this tension of, but I'm not just a Twitter person, and I can't, like, it's not the role of the church, like you're saying, to weigh in on everything that passes across our radar.
I think there's a hunger for people to know. Like, I know, as I think about some of the folks in my church, some of them will ask me, hey, what should we think about this as Christians? Whatever this is, right? A cultural thing that just happened, an event or whatever. How should we think about this? And in that moment, you can say, that's a really good question. Let's get together. Let's talk about this, or whatever it is. And so, if somebody asks you a question, certainly answer it. But I do believe that there are oftentimes moments that we can just take some time. Ryan, you mentioned earlier, I can't remember if it was offline or in the recording, where you were talking about how there's this pressure on like Twitter to get on top of a story as soon as it breaks. And you said everything there, we don't have the patience to wait 3 days for a story to develop and get all the context and then be published. I think that's a little bit more where the church can step in, because in a lot of these difficult topics, a lot of these difficult circumstances that are happening in cultural events and social movements and stuff, I think the church can and oftentimes should say something. But it should be reasoned. It should be said with humility, with other voices contributing to the conversation, and having the kind of nuanced conversation that silence allows you to build. If you're too busy talking right away, you don't have the time to build a community that can contribute many voices to a conversation, many perspectives, and give a reasoned whatever statement or conversation or whatever you want to say.
Yeah, that's beautifully said. I mean, just let's just take race as the example, right? Ideally we're in communities that, like, there's no need for us to get out our George Floyd hot take like this, because we have already been living a life together for years where we are not dominated by the news cycle, and we've been faithful in talking through these things and bearing witness to what we think needs to be borne witness to in the culture. We've already been having that conversation, as a community for years. So we don't have to answer to the news item and be reactionary to that. I love that idea that you put forward. I think it was beautiful. It was beautifully said, which again was why I had to like tag on and mangle it and repeat it.
Oh, it's all good. No, it's all good, man. Well, I'll tell you, if we want to bring this all around and cycle it to the end here, I think we can say that if you want to learn about silence, go back to the story about the dogs.
Yeah,
a dog will never say a word to you. A dog will never say a word to you, but will comfort you with their presence. They will just be with you. And oftentimes that's just all that you need, is to just cry into the fur of a dog sitting on your lap.
So this is an interesting thing that you just brought up, Ryan. Thinking back on Barney's life, Barney has passed away. He's long gone.
Sorry, yes, I went to Barney the dinosaur. I'm sorry.
Yeah, well, there
Barney,
you go.
Your
See?
Barney.
My
Your
Barney.
Yes.
Yeah. According to the 90s movie, All Dogs Go to Heaven. So Barney's in heaven right now.
Yeah.
And
of course, watching you.
Yeah.
And,
so I remember.
And will cry tears of joy when he sees you again.
Well, when he was younger, he was not quiet. He was not quiet. Like he'd bark, he'd whimper all night long. And, but the older he got, the quieter he got. I guess that was wisdom.
The dogs, dogs are growing in wisdom.
There's no other explanation for that.
Nope.
Guys, I feel like I'm learning something. I feel like we're all learning something here today.
Be like Barney. That's what we're learning.
Be like Barney. That's yeah.
If nothing else, people will leave this conversation hearing us talk inspired to be more silent and less like us in their daily life.
That's right.
Oh man, guys. Well, cool. Hey, Ryan, thanks so much for joining us today. This has been really fun. And listen, for those of you who are watching us or listening to us, please, if you have any questions or comments or want to tell us about your family dog that you grew up with, please reach out to us at biclifepodcast@gmail.com, biclifepodcast@gmail.com. We'd love to hear from you. If you have questions, we'd love to talk about them on the podcast. Or whatever you have, any kind words or anything, leave them for us and we'll check it out. Thanks for reaching out. Any last words here, Scott? Ryan, want to wrap us up? We good?
Well, I got nothing.
Let's end.
In silence.
We'll end in silence. Ryan, what was your silence? Your wrap up, your bow.
I was just going to say, I know you always take pains to say this is an unofficial BIC podcast.
Oh,
but I am an official employee of the Brethren in Christ Atlantic Conference. So
that's true. That didn't come out in your initial intro there, did it?
Yeah, I forgot that. So
yes.
So I don't know where that places us, but
we made a crossover.
We made a crossover episode. That's great. This is cool. Mixing the official with unofficial.
We just said unofficial because we didn't want to get in trouble.
That's right.
Too late now, boys.
Too late now.
Oops.
All right, everybody. Well, thanks for joining us, and we'll catch you for our next episode. We'll see you next time.
Thanks for listening to the BIC Life Podcast. Brethren in Christ churches exist to follow Jesus, serve others, and make disciples. If you're looking for more information about the BIC denomination, or if you're looking for one of our local churches, head over to bicus.org. And if you'd like to get in touch with us at the podcast, you can do so by emailing us at biclifepodcast@gmail.com. Thanks again for listening, and we'll see you next time.